Welcome to the Collective Trauma Summit opening event. My name is Anna Molitor, and I'll be the host for our session today. I'm also the poetry curator for the summit and hosted a few of the interviews with poets, so I'm very pleased to welcome poet Kim Rosen for our invocation today. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Anna. Poetry, for me, is a form of non-denominational prayer. And one of its superpowers is to use the mind to unlock the mind, which disrupts our patterns of thinking and leaves us undefended to the real self, to the wisdom, to the feelings that are always alive within us. And this power can be expanded with some poems by adding music. This music is by Jami Sieber. And by adding community in a listening community. So as we begin this 9-day journey, I invite you to become aware that there are listeners all over the planet right now, here in this moment, sharing the words of Rumi, 2 poems by Rumi, about that listening. Sometimes you hear a voice through a door calling you. Like fish out of water hear the waves. Or a hunting falcon hears the drum. Come back. This turning toward what you deeply love saves you. Sometimes you hear a voice through a door calling you. Like fish out of water hear the waves. Or a hunting falcon hears the drum. Come back. This turning toward what you deeply love saves you. Children fill their shirts with rocks and carry them around. We're not children anymore. Read the book of your life that has been given you. A voice comes to your soul saying, lift your foot, cross over, move into the emptiness of question and answer and question. Sometimes you hear a voice through a door calling you. Like fish out of water hear the waves. Or a hunting falcon hears the drum. Come back. This turning toward what you deeply love saves you. Children fill their shirts with rocks and carry them around. We're not children anymore. Read the book of your life that has been given you. A voice comes to your soul saying, lift your foot, cross over, move into the emptiness of question and answer and question. What is the deep listening? Sama is a greeting from the secret ones inside the heart. A letter. The branches of your intelligence grow new leaves in the wind of this listening. The body reaches a peace. Rooster sound comes, reminding you of your love for dawn. The reed flute and the singer's lips, the knack of how spirit breathes into us, becomes as simple and ordinary as eating and drinking. The dead rise with the pleasure of listening. If someone can't hear a trumpet melody, sprinkle dirt on his head and declare him dead. Listen and feel the beauty of your separation, the unsayable absence. There's a moon inside every human being. Learn to be companions with it. As brightness is to time, so you are to the one who talks to the deep ear in your chest. I should sell my tongue and buy 1,000 ears when that one steps near and begins to speak. I should sell my tongue and buy 1,000 ears when that one steps near. Two poems by Rumi, A Voice Through the Door, and Listening, both available in the book The Glance, and the music was by Jami Sieber. Thank you so much. Now I'm pleased to welcome the host of our Collective Trauma Summit, Thomas Hübl.
Thank you so much, Kim, and welcome everybody. I want to also give thanks to Jami Sieber for her accompaniment of many of our events with her music, beautiful music. And yes, this is the opening of our Collective Trauma Summit. And I want to also honor all of our amazing team. Our team, we were working for 10 months on this production, and I think our team is fantastic, and we put a lot of heart and energy into the curation of the summit. So thank you everybody for all the amazing work that leads up to this moment. This is our opening ceremony, our opening event today. I want to share with you a little bit why Collective Trauma Summit, why do we think that's important? And I want to also then with Angel and Ruby have a conversation about the summit creation, but also about the topic, the collective healing movement that we aim for with this summit. So 5 years ago, we started with the Collective Trauma Summit as a way to get the word out. I was working on collective trauma for 20 plus years and wrote a book about it and said, okay, we need to create awareness that trauma is a systemic component. We are living in an ecosystem that has been traumatized for thousands of years, or is being traumatized for thousands of years. And we are growing up in it. We are being conditioned by it, educated by a world that is partly integrated and resourced and growing, and is partly stuck in the past. And we only through collective awareness can we become first aware what we don't see because it became so normal, so that we share a certain language, we share a certain behavior, we share societal structures. We live in recurrent traumatization right now as we speak. And so developing an awareness was our first intention with the summits, and then it shifted and we put more and more emphasis on, okay, there's collective trauma. We did at least our part to make that more like a discussion and like a conversation. But now we are focusing on how do we actually create a healing movement, because trauma, as we all know, is the response in our bodies, but also in our societies, to strongly adverse experiences, overwhelming experiences that we cannot process, that are too painful to process. And so we go through what we call trauma response. I think for us, it's also important that we reframe that the trauma response is actually a function that has been grown over a long period of time in evolution and is an intelligent function to protect us. And with the summits, we also want to reframe multiple things around trauma. One is that the trauma response is our intelligence. It helped many of us to go through difficulties and adversities in a different way and survive them or go through them in the highest possible way. It has after effects. It creates a lot of symptoms in our lives. And we want to depathologize trauma and learn about its intelligence, create the ecosystems that are needed, like our summit, like a lot of the work that many of our summit speakers do. Amazing work in the world in very different disciplines, in very different ways, in very different modalities, because we believe that a collective healing movement is the capacity to be deeply grounded in the intelligence that everybody brings. And our speakers are just an example of people that often turned their own trauma, and you can hear it in many of the conversations, how our own life story is actually partly the engine to heal ourselves in order to become a healing. So we become a psychoactive remedy in the collective sphere by integrating our own traumatizations, our own wounds, our ancestors' wounds, our cultural wounds, become the power to contribute. And so if sometimes the modern version of purpose is career, we want to also look at that and say, maybe, of course, our contribution to society and to life is important, and that we can share our gifts and our intelligence and create the flourishing work in the world is very important. And it's not after we healed ourselves. The process of healing ourselves is deeply part of our purpose, because whatever we heal in ourselves actually becomes part of the resilience, the resourcing, the power, the intelligence, the wisdom, the post-traumatic learning, the ethical reconciliation, the restoration of life. So it's not just that we heal something that's outside of us, it's we are part of it. And the more we heal our own individual, ancestral, and collective trauma wounds, we become together like a growth, an innovative capacity, and also an ethical upgrade for this world, which I think is very important in order to stop the adversities and also to have the wisdom to keep on innovating and inventing new technological breakthroughs, scientific breakthroughs in many ways that need a high level of ethical wisdom to be handled. And that's why I think we are looking with this summit, and in many of the conversations, it's a co-exploration. It's a creative process. And also we're very happy because many artists, poets are part of the summit to bring in that voice, but we'll talk about this in a minute. And so together we create a healing movement. And how do we create a healing movement? By gathering our tribe, bringing people together that care for the same passion, care for our world. Doesn't matter if that's climate, social justice, if there's deep trauma therapy, if this is our spiritual impulse, which, as Kim so beautifully read right now, or recited, it's not reading, it's recited through her own energies, we can feel the yearning of Rumi through her voice for the greater context, that which is maybe invisible to our eyes, but is a very strong resource in the healing work. We care for diversity. We care for many different voices that bring to us ancient voices of healing from around the world, and let us participate in the beauty of all that has been developed already. So we are not just talking about new things, we are talking about ancient powers that are available to us if we want to go through a healing process individually and ancestrally and collectively. So I think this year, the summit is very much centered around how do we collectively become the answer to a collective need, and how do we collectively create the resilience to be prepared enough for a time of also disruption through climate change and other big topics that we are dealing with every day. And so the collective healing movement led to the fact that we created a very powerful network and some of us became deep friends, and we support each other ongoingly in the work that we do, and we inspire each other. So we learned a lot, and I think Angel and Ruby will tell us their version of their process of interviewing, having conversations with amazing people. And so we made all of that available for you to participate in a global conversation around collective trauma, but also collective healing, and what are our visions at the moment, and what are leading edge visions that are around and that are inspiring. And we listen to them because I think to feel the transmission of everybody, basically, that transform parts of themselves in order to contribute to life, and we feel their passion and their creativity inspires our own passion. And it's not that we are aiming to copy one or the other ways, but I think listening, as again Kim recited, was also listening deeply sparks our own creativity, our own gift, our own purpose, and then we become an orchestra together. And maybe the last thing, and then I would love to invite Ruby and Angel. I think it's good to again and again explore the fact that we are ecosystemically or intradependent, as Dan Siegel loves to say, like that we are not just individuals in this world, we are individuals and we are ecosystems. We are not in an ecosystem. I believe we are the ecosystem as well. So we constantly impact each other, and we are being impacted by each other, and there is a constant exchange. And I think becoming part of that alive exchange, not the relationship, it's actually relating. It's exchanging information all the time, means we can become part of an ecosystemic clearing process. So we can become part of the health of the ecosystem that we are part of by the way we are living and by the way we create relationships and by the way we support the bigger whole to heal, to be more just, more fair, more to support equality and healthy relationships for all. Like I often say, the 3 human rights: the right to be, the right to become, and the right to belong. If we can support this in everybody we know, then I think we are living in a flourishing world. And with that, I want to hand over maybe to Anna, and then we will go into a conversation. So again, a warm welcome to the Collective Trauma Summit 2023. I hope you enjoy all the talks that you're interested in, and it will inspire your life.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Yeah, before we get to the conversation with Ruby and Angel, we're going to have a quick tour of the topics and speakers who will be appearing in the summit, just to convey the breadth and scope of what we're doing here in this conversation. So we're really excited and grateful to have people from more than 100 countries around the globe participating in the summit. So Diego, can you share some of those slides, and I'll just give us a little overview. So all of this information and more is available on the summit website, collectivetraumasummit.com, where you can see the full schedule. You can read a bit about each talk. You can read quotes from the speakers. You can even watch short video clips of almost all 60 talks. So also noting that many of our speakers embody a cross-disciplinary curiosity. So while they address multiple topics, we're just going to show them in one category here for the visual reference. So just to begin here, we have such an amazing group of people here within all the categories, but here with trauma-informed therapy, we have 10 speakers sharing expertise on various therapy models, neuroscience, attachment, racial and gender justice, how collective and ancestral trauma surface in individual therapy, and a whole lot more. And then, under the banner of social resilience, we have 14 speakers, and here's the first group of 8, addressing the transformation of challenges into post-traumatic learning and resilience. And then Diego, you can show us the second. We have, this topic includes humanitarian work, refugee aid, trauma-informed law, climate displacement and resettlement, incarceration, trauma and healing, and again, a whole lot more. And then moving on to spiritual trauma and healing. It's a really important realm we're addressing in this year's summit, with 8 speakers from multiple spiritual traditions sharing about approaches to integrating and healing trauma, as well as work that restores our innate connection after spiritual wounding. And then one of the most dynamic and important themes this year is social justice, where 7 activists and teachers will join us to explore collective liberation, restorative justice, trauma-informed approaches to advance racial equity, along with a lot of their exciting visions and their strategies for co-creating this new emergent world together. And then more than ever, we need to address the climate emergency we're facing. And so the summit features 7 speakers on trauma-informed climate activism, natural disaster relief, and working with anxiety, overwhelm, and dissociation, so we can shift much more into effective activism in the world. And then we are also bringing you a fascinating collection of 11 leaders sharing on the topics of trauma-informed media, tech, economy, and leadership. These are the first 6 of them. And then in the next slide, there'll be the 5 others. And this category is highlighting the shift from systems that trigger toxic anger, fear, separation, defensiveness, toward intelligent systems that reflect and heal the underlying collective trauma, and so bring the world closer together through that process. And then, of course, we are all doing our own personal and collective healing work on so many levels. And so we're joined by 8 artists, musicians, and somatic teachers to support us in healing and integration throughout the summit. And then last but not least, the poets, the poetry, these cultural workers of the soul, of the collective psyche, and as well as the deeply personal and intimate spaces. The interviews with poets have become such a beloved and essential element in these past summits. And so we're bringing you 8 award-winning poets to help you feel and integrate on a deeper level what we're all doing here together. And so just carrying this, the energy of this amazing group of humans with us into a deeper conversation here. And we'll transition to a conversation with 2 of our summit hosts and Thomas, and I'd love to introduce you to them. Ruby Mendendall is a professor of sociology and African American studies, associate dean for diversity and democratization of health innovation at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. So welcome, Ruby. Great to have you with us. And then Dr. Angel Acosta is the principal consultant at Acosta Consulting and the director of the Garrison Institute's fellowship program. Welcome, Angel. Both of you great friends in this work. And then for those of you who don't know Thomas, he is a teacher, author, and international facilitator whose lifelong work integrates the core insights of the great wisdom traditions and mysticism with the discoveries of science. And his latest book, Attuned, Practicing Interdependence to Heal Our Trauma and Our World, was released earlier this month. So welcome, Thomas, as well.
Thank you.
And just to start, I know you will just jump right in, all of you, but just to start, let's think about and start exploring why all of this exploration of collective trauma is so important at this point in time. How do we see a collective healing movement forming? Maybe what ingredients you see are needed to connect with that motivation of recognizing collective trauma, trying to create different kinds of containers for exploring the healing, and how we connect this network and gather the people who feel motivated in this work. And maybe also just moments from your interviews and highlights that you experienced in this process of being a part of the global network in these conversations.
Maybe one of you wants to start. I spoke already, so I would love to give you the space to speak.
Sister Ruby.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. Thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful, amazing summit. And Thomas, I really want to start, I think what you're doing, right? We talk a lot about creating this ecosystem. And I think what's really interesting about your ecosystem in terms of creating a collective movement is that it's very diverse from places, different lives, lived experiences. And even, I said it before, even myself as a Black female, right? I've been in spaces and have interacted with people who normally would not be in my circle. And it's been really transformative, right? I've really been able to learn and to see different aspects of trauma and healing. So I think that's definitely one. And I also think that there's an alchemy that comes. Maya Angelou and Oprah Winfrey, they talk about, I come as one and I stand as 10,000. And so people who have been in your life and who have impacted you, and as Thomas says, make a impression on your nervous system, right? Like they really take you to a different level, to a different place. And I think that's definitely part of it. And then of course, I want to talk about Sankofa, right? Which is kind of going back and seeing the wisdom that was there before in the past and using that to kind of think about the future, to build on the future. We talk a lot about the wisdom of trauma, but there's also wisdom in terms of how people have been resilient, especially, from my background, African American. In my own family, I hear stories about those who were enslaved, and at night, they would come and teach the others. And so when we think about, again, what's needed, I think about unprecedented access, right? People will always hear me talk about that. How do we allow people to be in elite spaces, right? I'm at the university, I'm associate dean at the College of Medicine. I'm in a lot of very elite spaces, and how do we bring others, especially young people, the youth, into these spaces? And I think the last thing I'll say in terms of kind of thinking about a movement is, for my own self, I'll say imagination, right? So even now I'm thinking about third Reconstruction, first one after slavery, and I read Du Bois and how he talked about Reconstruction, and then during the Civil Rights era, the second, and then kind of in this moment now, even in a time as with the first and the second one, when people, some people are not interested, right, in kind of the healing part, they're not interested in repairing, and how do you, in the midst of that, create a collective movement? So those are some things that I'm kind of thinking about, and again, the 10,000 and that energy, I think is a really big part of it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, sister. You know, this is my, I think, third or second time hosting, and just always a pleasure to talk with some of the luminaries in the field who are thinking about healing and transformation of trauma in a variety of different ways. So always a privilege to be in dialogue and to sharpen my interviewing skills, and just to be in community with you, Ruby, with you, Thomas, and others. I think for me, kind of touching into the isolation and loneliness epidemic that was produced or exacerbated by the pandemic, and the way in which many of online programs like the Summit emerged to support with not just online education, but also community. So I think this year's Summit really extends the curatorial power of not just Thomas and the team, but also this strong desire to be in community, to feel a sense of togetherness, and to tap into a global healing movement and feel a sense of resonance. So I'm just really seeping and marinating in this feeling of not being alone in this work. And I think that's very significant right now when there's so much happening in regards to, some people might call it polycrises, multiple levels of crises, whether it be climate change, political polarization, racial inequality. But part of what post-traumatic learning teaches us is that maybe there are poly opportunities, multiple opportunities to intervene in the crises. And there's something there that's really resourcing me right now.
And that's interesting because first of all, I'm very happy to be doing this with the two of you, and of course all the other hosts. But I think we also formed like a friendship over the time, and we got to know each other in different facets of our being, which I highly appreciate, and which also is deeply nourishing and so beautiful. And so even creating the summit created community for us, as you said, Angel, now. And I also think that community and relational support, relational environments are one of the main remedies, as we know. So I think that ecosystem is very important. And one aspect of that ecosystem that I experienced, and I'm wondering how you felt about that, is that I think almost in every conversation, it was like as if like whoever I was in conversation with, we touched in a way a place where we gave birth to something new. And it doesn't need to be something huge, of course, but where we felt that we are meeting, enable something new to be born, that we could walk away both and be inspired. And then we both take it in wherever we take it. But I love that part, that innovative part, and really learning from each other. I learned a lot through all the conversations, and it enriched my own thinking, my own sensing, my own experience. And there was often this fertilizing moment, like an inspirational moment. Like as if my neurons started to light up, and then there was like this feeling of, wow, yeah, now we are in that space. And I'm wondering how you experienced that, and maybe how is your description, if you did, how you feel these moments. But I think that's often what I say. I gave myself a great gift with creating that summit because of those moments. And so maybe you can speak a little bit to the fertilization that happens, even if you speak, from different backgrounds and fields. And yeah.
Yeah, I can jump in there briefly. Yeah, my conversations with Adrian Marie Brown, with Sean Jinwright, with my brother Edgar, just I think the common theme throughout my interviews, and though I know their work like the back of my hand, so the result of not just me knowing their work, but this moment of being in a relationship, and leveraging the public forum of the Institute to talk deeper about the work, I think led to some unique insights around the purpose of each other's work, and how that purpose is so unique. Everybody has such a unique approach to restoration, to trauma recovery, to kind of a healing. And the last thing I'll say is it felt like quilt patchwork. Like, although everybody had a particular unique purpose, together, stitching it together, we really created this really beautiful quilt of a variety of different patches of purposes. So, and just to make the kind of symbolic connection around, the patchwork in the quilt, and then that kind of almost like wrapping around each of us in a warm way as we move into the fall, the winter, at least in the United States, move into a very complicated election cycle.
Yeah, I agree. Complicated. When I interviewed Mia Mingus, we talked about kind of handling hurt and conflict and how that can escalate to violence and abuse. And I remember during the time, and for those who are listening, you'll see if you watch it, and I was like, yeah, there's someone right now, right? Like I'm in conflict with, and it was so, right, really, it felt really good talking to her about that and hearing her wisdom. And then I, after that was like, okay, I have to address this conflict. Happy to say it's addressed and we're back in relationship, but that is really important. Again, this kind of back and forth. And also when she picked up like the importance of allowing people to make mistakes and for people to be able to say, wow, that hurt. And then for someone to say, wow, I didn't mean it. What can I do? And again, so on the individual level, but when you take it up to the country level or the global level, right? What would it mean? Spend a lot of time thinking about reparations, right? To repair, and even thinking about different language because it's so contentious, right? Talk about complexity. That's something that's so complex and people immediately often take sides. So, and then also with Yolo Robinson, when we kind of talked about Black people and how we talk about mental health and are we scared to discuss mental health? And he made the point, often we're not. What we are afraid of is the system that will get that information and then what will they do with it? And so again, in my own work, kind of thinking about the importance of providing that and just making it part of the culture, right? So people don't even have to raise their hand and say, you know, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling this way, that there'll be such a holding of them that it could be healing. And then for those who do need the extra support with therapists, right, they would have that as well. And then with Julian Brave Noise Cat, really talked about the importance, like I talked about Sankofa, the importance of going back to those traditional healing practices, to collecting oral histories and asking people, what was it like during your time? How did you survive it? Like, how did you work through that trauma? And you talked about the post-traumatic growth, right? We wouldn't use those words, but like how did you use that? What did you do? And again, kind of taking that and weaving it into our stories and into our myths. And you think about now, right? I do a lot of work with gun violence in young people. And recently when they were talking, there was so much grief and so much pain around that, but they were also very resilient, and they were looking and planning for the future. And again, when I talk about unprecedented access, so what does it mean? They're in the trauma, but they can see how to get out of it, right? They can bring resources. And what does it mean to bring them those resources, to give them unprecedented access? So that conversation with Julian really, again, inspired me to do whatever I can, right, to give them the access. And then the last thing I'll say is someone commented on my earrings, and they're the West African Adinkra symbol, and it means endurance and resourcefulness. And so that's also what I think this trauma summit does, trauma and healing summit does, right? It gives people a sense that they can endure, but then also that there are resources and resilience there as well.
That's beautiful. This reminds me of my conversation with Dr. Julia Kim. She said something beautiful, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm using my own words now, but she said something to the extent that it's the way how we respond to a crisis that will be the soil on which the next generation is going to grow. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. It's not just about avoiding crisis. Of course, we will do not to have them, or not to be in them, if we can be wise enough to listen to the prior signs. But that if we are already in a crisis, the way we are, for example, the climate crisis, there are things that are already happening, but the way we respond to the crisis is a way is creating a certain quality, like how we collaborate, how we create ecosystems of supportive ecosystems to hold ourselves and others during a crisis, is also setting the tone for the future. And I thought that's interesting for us to contemplate all the time how important every step is. And I think that's also what you, Ruby, what I heard you say right now, also when we go and we ask the former generations, because there's always, like in reconnecting ourselves to the former generations, we're having conversations with our roots. And that's not just listening to the past, that's also activating something in ourselves. And I think that's a powerful contribution, like that kind of ancestral awareness and healing work that happens there is a way to become aware of the soil that we have been born into, the quality that we picked up and maybe perpetuate or do not perpetuate. And I think that's very interesting. So thank you for bringing in the ancestral piece also. That's very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what else is there to touch? I invite you two to maybe ask yourself a question, or each other a question, or me a question, as we transition to the last 15 minutes of our dialogue. Is there a question that hasn't been asked? Is there an edge to this work? Is there a shadow to this work? I'm just being playful.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Maybe we start with art first, and then maybe we go to the edge
Yeah,
of this one.
yeah. I think the art piece that came up for me was across many of the conversations I had, especially the one with Adrian, was the role of art, in particular the role of poetry and song, and being this kind of intergenerational transmission of resilience and the remembering of song and the transmitting of song, and but more precisely, the way that art allows us to be in touch with the totality of what and who we are, emotional or spiritual or physical or intellectual, as opposed to just processing all the changes that are happening around us from a logical, if possible, logical level, but really more fear-based, with all the different changes that are happening in exponential rates. But art, the processing of art, the making of art, allowing us to kind of make meaning of the world, and in order to adapt to it in a more maybe wholesome way or responsive way.
Yeah, I agree. Like art, I think it's very powerful. I write poetry. Also, I was saying like my clothing, right? That's also kind of my artistic expression with the colors. And I have several gardens, almost seven gardens, and just beautiful flowers there. And my neighbors often come and says, "Oh, I really love your garden." And I'm like, yeah, it's helping me cope. Because when I first started, I had one, but it grew to 7 during COVID, during George Floyd, during the police killings, when I was just, my heart was just like breaking over all the things that were happening. And I would just be in there planning and doing other things. And then the person who's the white male said, it's helping us cope too. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting, right? Because I was doing it for my own kind of mental health. And then to know that it was helping others, I think it's really powerful. And I think in terms of art and music and all of that it has a power that can hold both the beauty, but then also the ugly as well, right? It can talk about the oppression and the pain and the cost and the death and the trials and all of that, but then also the beauty and the soothing nature of love and kindness and things like that. So I think, again, when we talked about what's needed in the movement, that art is an essential part of that. And even in my own work, I talked about, designing the third reconstruction, which is a bold, audacious kind of thing to say, but then also Chicago Renaissance, right? So both a time of intense science, but also of intense art. And the last thing I'll say is, again, with the young people, this summer we were in the studio creating a song, and it's to this documentary that we're doing about gun violence. And so it was really kind of moving and also, sad and heart-wrenching kind of to hear their voices and how they talked about kind of their environment and what it means to lose a child and all of that. So I'm all for art. I think it's one of our key healing modalities, and also a modality around resistance and that can cross boundaries in ways that our words and our intellect can't cross those boundaries in different.
And just maybe a short description when because you're passionate about art, you write poetry, in the creative moment or act, how would you describe the difference of your experience, or how does art support something that maybe your intellectual exploration doesn't? Is there a description of the difference of these states?
I have 6 months. I recently wrote a poem for promotion that I received at the university, was named Catherine Dallenbach LAS professor. And I wanted to tell people, thank you for the journey and being with me, but I also wanted to kind of bring in some of the challenges, right? So I didn't just kind of put them out there. I put them kind of in words. And so it helps me feel like I'm showing up with my full self, right? That both I'm happy, but then, you know, it's been a challenge here being a Black female in America, and then also in the academy. So can I just do like maybe six lines of the poem? Is that okay? Do we have time? Okay. So it's called Gratitude for This Journey with You. And actually put it on a piece of paper and I gave it to everyone that was there. But it says, my spirit entered this world, Black, brown, and beautiful. Both parents asked in different ways, what can I do for you? They loved me in a world of mahogany dowels and climbing fences. Years spent inside a double Dutch rope, learning new songs and dances. My family, amazing and complex, includes enslaved Africans fighting for survival. My Native American ancestors whisper from the trees the sacredness of my arrival. So that's just a part of it, but I was just saying, I'm in this elite space with this elite position, but my ancestors were enslaved, and their fight for survival is also in me, as I also have that fight. And also with my Native American ancestry, the story I hear is that my grandmother's grandfather was Native American. He loved kind of singing and going around trees. And I was like, okay. And then one day it hit me. Like I talk to the trees, I love the trees, I'm by them when I'm gardening and all of that. So I was trying to bring all of that into the poem. So that's what it gives you. It gives me an expansiveness when I talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It's very enriching. Also, it brings in your a deep personal side of yours and ancestral. So beautiful. Thank you. So, Angel, anything on that, or do you want to speak a little bit about edges and shadows?
Just for the community, this idea of the third reconstruction is something that's important to lift. I invite the community to check out Reverend William Barber, folks in the United States. Just want to lift the idea of a third reconstruction, because the reconstructions that happened previously failed to create a truly integrated society. And I think it's significant that we lean on the vision of folks like Ruby and Reverend Barber in regards to that. So I just wanted to highlight that. And just encourage everybody to pick up a brush, pick up a pen, even if you're not poetic, just as you're feeling all these different waves of changes and stressors and transformations, create opportunities to metabolize that via maybe the pen, maybe the brush, maybe your hips and dancing. So just encouraging everybody to join the global healing movement, even if it's a 2-step at a time. Or 2-stepping.
That's beautiful. And maybe we talk a little bit about edges and shadows. Since you brought that up, I think that's interesting. And I think one edge is, or in some of the deep collective trauma processes where we were as like large groups, it was as if like there's always a moment where we kind of meet the end of the known universe. We meet the end of where the shadow is so strong that we can't feel beyond it. There's only like a bowing to the collective denial or the collective suppression that enables us to go to a next level. And I think, I mean, that's highlighted in this process work when we go deeper, but it invites all of us to check that the world we see or we feel is only a part of the work, and we're part of the world that we see, and to go in a way to be aware of that fact and see what we can do to get to know that edge where the world's not arising anymore in our perception, and that's why it's also not arising really in any kind of awareness that we have of it. And I'm wondering, first of all, what do you think about that, and how that relates to your own experience? I think that would be, for example, one edge, like an edge that we share as society, that is hard to look beyond, and maybe what kind of practices, tools, and possibilities we have to do that.
Yeah, I think that edge highlights for me, the edge on my end, for my observation and response to you, is this idea of surrender and surrendering. What are the practices, the methodologies that allow us to surrender when the world becomes rendered intelligible? We can't read it anymore. So those practices of surrender, I think, are a major edge, especially when people are flooded with so much stress, and there's the clinging to the known and clinging to a sense of survival and protection, and that can sometimes give us a sense of certainty around at least what we're protecting ourselves from. And so I think, yeah, that's the edge for me. Part of it is, how can we surrender, and maybe just maybe move with broken hearts. You know, that's the best way that I can say it, is really, but not in a broken heart in a negative way, but rather broken open. Our hearts broken open to what can come from uncertainty, what can come from surrender.
Mm. Yeah. And Angel, thank you for bringing up Reverend Barber. There is really important, and I'll just give a personal experience. So sometimes in this community, right, like I'm one of a few Black women, and so it's right. So sometimes I'm fighting, when we talk about the shadows and things, all the history, right, of what it means to be a Black female in a predominantly white space, and even sometimes a white European space, and then like things could be said that may be hurtful that people don't intend to be. And so, right, I see myself at the edge, right? So then what do? Do I withdraw from the edge, which I have done at times, or do I kind of move forward, which I have done? And again, like when I move forward, it's been really transformative, and being able to see and to witness others' pain and connect, like Robin Alfred, for we talked about, just listed kind of white privilege and how it played out. There was a connection there, and so we even wrote like a poem together, right? So again, the power of art to transcend backgrounds and individuals who may be different, I think is important. So yes, the edges are there, and sometimes surrender is protective, and it's, you know, what's needed at the time, and sometimes I'm kind of pushing beyond the edge and finding alchemy, finding community, finding relationships is stunningly a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Angel, I know you will have to leave soon. Maybe is there anything that you want to leave us with, and any final thoughts. It's so great to have you here, and anything that we didn't say that seems important for you.
Yeah, I think we may be in the most illuminating moment in our species history, from artificial intelligence to climate change. It sounds like we have a buffet. We have quite the buffet of things to engage. All kinds of, not just food for thought, but things to actually respond to. And so things feel really serious, and I want to remind everyone to be gentle and to take advantage of this summit to see all the different luminaries who are in the field. And as you're looking at and listening to the interviews, pay attention to that gentleness. Pay attention to how people are talking about their work, and if you can touch how they're holding this moment lightly, and may that invite you to hold it lightly as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Angel, and thank you for your contribution to the summit. It gives a lot to the summit, and I love every conversation we have. So it's amazing, and be blessed in your work and your life and your family. Thank you. Maybe, Anna, do you want to chime in here and tell us how this lands with you, how this relates to your own experience of the summit?
Yeah, it's great to listen to all of you. And I was thinking about, with the edge, I spoke with the Diné poet, Jake Skeets, and you'll have to listen to get the exactness of this, but he comes from a clan that the name indicates something on the far horizon that you see kind of out in the distance. And he said that people from his clan are often the storytellers and the poets and the artists, and that their role is this listening kind of ahead of the people for what's coming from the horizon, and learning how to bring that through and communicate that somehow for others. And it was very beautiful just to feel that edge walking, that listening for what's coming, and listening to what, and also this broad fabric, like the way that the artists and the poets really explore the fabric of how we see our reality and the things that are hidden, and how we construct what we see and what we don't see, what we might not even know we're not seeing. And so I feel this like such an energy moving in those conversations with these artists who are, their lives are dedicated to this kind of deep listening and opening up the boxes of words and working with sound and working with so many elements. And I love it, Ruby, you have this so clearly in you that you're nodding to this, that there's a whole other level of communication that comes through. That's not just our hyper rational way. And that in this trauma healing, collective trauma healing process, we so need each other in our ways of exploring and cracking open the way that we story tell reality, sometimes in ways that that's not our daily lives, to see what our culture is not showing us about reality. And so it was also exciting just to feel that we finished those conversations really energized. And a couple of the poets commented, like, we're touching really deep places of pain and hurt. And yet there's an energy when we come together and we're connecting in that, and we're exploring together, like you spoke, Thomas, of the emergent spaces. And I also I'm thinking of speaking with Claudia Rankin, such a beautiful conversation also about intimacy, like intimacies. How do we, inside of white supremacy, inside of these institutionalized, racialized trauma, all kinds of things, how do we approach each other? How do we have real conversations where we come into the messiness and we speak to each other and we, feel what's happening. And she said, I loved, she said something like, she always says, why are we here if not for each other? So like the best we can do is come closer to each other, and really without jumping over all the things that are there between us. And we sat in the space too of, well, we don't have solutions. Like we can't just jump to an answer. We have to live these questions and sit together in the moments and feel where we are together. And from that deep listening, sometimes the next step will arise. But that there is no way to just say, well, we do this, this, and this, and we'll heal the collective trauma. But when we come together in our intimacy and in our hearts and in our beings and our listening, then something becomes possible that otherwise isn't. So I'm just grateful for all these artists and poets and everyone in the summit who's really doing this, and how this whole summit is that kind of conversation. I'm excited to see how the conversations come together and speak to each other in the wider matrix of it all. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe also chiming in on the artists. I had this conversation with Alanis Morissette and also Stephen Gyllenhaal. Alanis, I think many people know from her music, and Stephen also his movies. And it's amazing when we feel, oh, great artists that really moves, big movies and music in concerts has a lot of impact. And so I thought the level of depth and passion to be really interested in the deeper dynamics of trauma and collective trauma, and how we can heal it, and how art on a larger scale can create like an impact, a healing impact, was really, really interesting also to hear, and also how creativity creates movement. So I think it's really wonderful to hear these different voices: poetry, music, filmmaking, and visual arts, as Judith, my wife, also brought in. So it's fantastic. I'm so happy that we have that, and that we can see how other different voices impact, like how art in the public space creates a dialogue in the witnessing process of art, or in the listening process. So this is really, I think, very interesting. And so I see our time. Ruby, is there anything from your end that you feel we didn't touch on, or anything you want to leave our global audience here with this opening moment of our summit?
I think the only thing I want to say is think about inspiration, right? When you listen to a lot of the talks, you'll be inspired, as we talked about, maybe to pick up a brush, or maybe to dance, or maybe inspired to give someone unprecedented access, right? So, and again, that's the beauty of coming as one, standing as 10,000, that it's not just you, that it's others who are a part of you, who are moving, and that's the power. And I'll just say, for me, my inspiration has been how movement, and just kind of all those ways that both the beauty and liberation were tied up together. So I just hope you are inspired, and I'm almost sure you will be inspired by this summit.
Yeah, so thank you, Ruby. I love our collaboration here. This is already for multiple years, and I always feel inspired, and I love the radiance of your being in this space, and how much you transmit when you're here with us, and how much love you give into the summit space and other spaces where we collaborate. So thank you for all your work you're doing. It's an amazing part of this global healing movement. So thank you very much. Yeah, Anne, the same to you. I think you brought so much love. You introduced the whole poetry section to the summit, and you stood in for that. So thank you for that. And I think it inspired us all the years. And I feel deeply nourished by all the conversations and all the poetry we've had over the years. So thank you for that, Anna, and for your passion. Is there anything from your side for now? That's
The last thing I want to say is a thank you for that, how you welcomed this in our community. And something I wanted to say from the conversation with Jake Skeets is he talked about a kind of hope. He called it anti-colonial or critical hope that's not about the future or the past. And from the Dene worldview, that it's a hope to be here now, to be present in this moment. And I think that speaks a lot to the work that you're doing here and that we're all doing. I just wanted to bring that in, and thank you so much for convening us.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Yeah, that's a lovely transition actually to, we want to give you also, if you're listening in, of course, it's an opening event for the summit, but we want to also always convey that we are not looking at something that's outside of ourselves. We are collective trauma, and the interrelatedness of many layers of trauma and resourcing in us is actually something we are part of, not something we are looking at. So the experience that we carry when we experience trauma is that we are looking at something, that the world's out there. But every healing, but also a lot of the wisdom traditions speak about coming more and more into our integrated state is also means that we feel the world from within. So we feel either interdependent or, as Dan Siegel says, intraconnected. And so I want us to take a moment just to have a little bit of an experiential aspect, that we are all part of it. And I invite you to, we will do a few minutes, just a contemplative relationship to what we just talked about, so that we experience this also in ourselves. And then we will do a short sound meditation, toning meditation that I will bring in for a few minutes, and then we will finish with some lovely poetry. And for the contemplation, I think one aspect that sometimes is missing in the traumatic experience, and that is also an important remedy, is space. So maybe you can just lean back or sit straight and just notice how you feel when you listen to all of this. Just feel your body and feel your kind of current inner state. Maybe you take a deeper breath. And also listen for a moment to the motivation or the interest that brings you here. Because we all have like a part of us that feels drawn to something that is an important part of our internal movement and also external movement. But it's great to feel and to listen to that which motivates us to participate in something or to be interested in something. And to feel that interest, maybe it has multiple levels, maybe there's a more superficial thought process, and then there is maybe like a deeper process of motivation, yearning. learning, inspiration, expansion of our capacity to be in the world, to perceive the world, participate, to find deeper meaning, community, or any other motivation you find in yourself. And also look maybe in yourself. What do you really care about in this moment? In the world, on this planet, in the society that you're living in, also in the closer circle, your community, your family. There are different levels of what we really care about. Because our care is also connected to our response to our life circumstances. And our care is connected to also how our ancestors care for this world, this point in time, through us. And in the care, we feel our purpose. We feel our contribution. We feel that we're all needed to collectively collaborate. The collective healing movement starts and is connected to the care for this world that we all feel. And maybe as I will do some sounds, just stay connected to your body and that care, and see what the deeper place that this care comes from. Even if it's not concrete and it's not always clear how to express it. The care tells us if we listen. Let's just have a minute of silence after the sounds. Stay connected to what you care about in our world today. And then after a minute, I hand it over to Kim.
Thank you, Thomas. Very powerful. I want to continue this prayerful moment with a prayer I wrote inspired by a very sacred Navajo healing prayer called the Night Chant. And as I speak it, I bow in gratitude to the indigenous American people who have taught us so much of ceremony and the sacred, and on whose land many of us are now standing. Body of mist, body of flaking ash, body of the night wind, body of my father's blood, body of seed pod, body of my grandmother's blood, body of shattered stars, body of honeybees, night's breath is spinning me. The way through is the breathing night. The untold stories rise up to sound me. These empty hands I raise. Receive this prayer from me. Receive my broken song. Receive this cry from me. Receive my fighting thoughts. In time, my thoughts become quiet. In time, I rest. In time, my words awaken. In time, I hear my song. With my song rushing through me, may I walk. No longer torn, may I walk. With all my feelings, may I walk on a path of sacred words. May I walk. Now, my feet remember the dirt. My arms, the sky. My breath, the waves. My tongue, the taste of rain. May I see with great clarity and wisdom. May I be a channel of truth and love. May I be safe in my living and in my dying. And may I be guided by the heart. May you see with great clarity and wisdom. May you be a channel of truth and love. May you be safe in your living and in your dying, and may you be guided by the heart. Thank you. Music by Jami Sieber. Body of Mist by me, Kim Rosen. And now I invite Anna to give some closing announcements.
Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you, Thomas, for facilitating this beautiful opening event for the summit. Thank you to Ruby Mendendall and Angel Acosta for your wisdom and your insights and your presence today. And thank you to all of you joining us, because it's in us all that this summit, this conversation, this global healing movement has a chance to fully come into life. So a reminder for us that there's already a lot available for you to enjoy in the summit, such as 4 speaker talks, a panel, a poet reading and conversation, a music performance with Kim Rosen and cellist Jami Sieber, 5 integration practices, and a daily insight video from Thomas. So each day's speaker talks are available for 48 hours to stream for free. And over the next 9 days, we'll be releasing 6 or more talks each day. By signing up for the free summit, you'll receive an email announcing the speaker lineup for each day, and hope you set aside time for listening to the ones you really want to get to. And if you're just finding us and have not yet signed up for free access, you can visit the website collectivetraumasummit.com. And we invite you to tell others about the summit. Anyone can join at any time throughout the event. If you'd like to have full access to all the recordings from the summits, you can listen on your own time. You can purchase the Collective Trauma Healing Upgrade Package, which includes lifetime access to over 60 talks in video, audio, and written form, as well as more than 30 speaker bonus gifts and a self-study course with Thomas entitled Understanding Collective Trauma. And that's all at a savings of 50% off during the summit time. So you'll find that offer to purchase on the website, collectivetraumasummit.com, as well as in the emails that we send. I just want to also say a thank you to the summit's partner organization, the Pocket Project, which is a nonprofit organization and global initiative that aims to restore the fragmentation in our communities and societies by addressing and supporting the integration of collective and intergenerational trauma. And you can learn more about that also by visiting the website pocketproject.org. So again, thank you to all of the amazing contributors, the speakers, panelists, poets, musicians, integration practice guides, and everyone behind the scenes putting this together for you. Yeah, thank you to our entire production and support team who've done amazing work. And we'll hope that you'll join us for our next live event, which is a global social witnessing event on Sunday, October 1st. And just we hope that you really enjoy the summit and receive a lot of inspiration. Thank you so much for joining us in this global healing movement.